order. Madame la Greffière.
Madam Deputy Mayor, we have an agenda before us. There are no changes or additions.
Could I have a mover and a seconder? Donc, Conseiller Richard, Conseiller Butler. Any questions? If not, we will go to the vote. Is this the show of
Manual,
hands?
yeah.
Donc, in favor? Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Madame la Greffière.
There are no
Madam Clerk,
interest et déclaration des conflits d'intérêts.
Are there any conflicts of interest? None. Madame la Greffière.
New business is I found new
Madam Clerk,
traffic control manual supplement, and Renee Legacy is here. I can never say your last name. I am so sorry, Radia. And Rick Jones he's supposed to be here. I haven't seen him, so, he's absent, so he will not be here. So take it away.
Bonjour,
hit your
Renee.
mic.
good afternoon, dear elected official. There is a PowerPoint. I'm not sure if we can bring it up, and I can
It's coming.
go through the slides. Perfect, thank you. Just a quick conversation on the work area traffic control manual. It's a bit of an odd acronym, but it's known in the industry as WATCHM. So I'll be referring to WATCHM as we go through these slides. Next slide, please. So really what we're talking about here are the signage that are on our, sorry, next slide, please. Oh, I can do that, actually. Yes. So what we're talking about today is really the signage that is on our construction sites, whether it be a renewal project or maintenance related. And it's signage, not only the types of signage, but also like the placement and where they need to be put. So WATCHM is actually a provincial guideline that's been in existence for quite a while. And we do have an urban supplement that is specific to the city, which we'll be talking about today. So just a quick example, a simple example of what could be found in this WATCHM. For instance, if you have a work area, you have a flagger on site, and there's a signage that needs to be placed for a work ahead signage. This sign has to be placed at a certain distance. It really depends on the speed limit. So the higher the speed limit, if you're on a highway, the greater the distance will be for that sign to be from the work area. And that is just from a safety point of view, so that people have time to react. So this is a simple example for what we could find in WATCHM. And obviously these setups get more complicated if you have like a street closure with a full detour in place. So as I mentioned, we do have an urban supplement. Why? Because the WATCHM manual is really about highways, provincial highways. And so it doesn't always apply to our municipal setting. So a few different, some of our streets have higher traffic volumes than highways, not all, but there's definitely lower speeds than we would find in a municipal highway system than on a provincial highway system. And we do have quite a bit of intersections which would not be found typically on your highway system, which would be more on-ramp and off-ramps. So we do have an urban supplement that was put together from 2009 to 2013, and we're here today for an update. Some of the things that change, and you have seen the changes in more detail, but we're talking about intersections and roundabouts. We definitely do have more roundabouts on our network, and also active transportation components, mainly when it comes to the detours. So we wanted a bit more verbiage and a bit more wording in there, how to detour pedestrians around our work sites, because we know it's very important to have that. Where do we go from here? We want to collaborate with other municipalities because it's really, Moncton was really the lead on this urban supplement, but we definitely see the value for other municipalities taking this over and potentially having a provincial supplement, if you wish, that would apply to all municipalities. And so we want to bring this up to the next level and have other municipalities kind of jump in. And we're thinking, well, speaking with Rick Jones, who's been a great lead on this, we're thinking that might be a 5-year process before we kind of get through all the legislation and whatnot. So in the meantime, this is really an urban supplement for the city of Moncton. But again, being the lead on this, we think there's value for other municipalities. And I did mention Rick, which was a great lead on this, our health and safety specialist. and also the transportation team, Radia and Jose, that are here today. So the recommendation that's in front of you is to adopt the revised Watcham, and it is a part of our city spec, our specifications. So whenever a contractor has to do work, whether it be renewal or maintenance in the city, they will have to follow this guideline, and which is why we're here today, because as we know, the specifications are to be adopted by City Council. And that is it today for the update. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, René. We have a
Thank you so much, René.
seconder, conseiller Richard. Je reviendrai à vous après. C'est beau. Thank you.
We'll come back to you later.
Any questions? Conseiller Richard, c'est beau.
Councillor Richard. Thank you, René, for your presentation.
Through this one and a second one prior to at work, so much larger than this one. So do you see, do you think budgetary side for the city work, do you think tenders coming in, there's going to be quite a change, or how do you see?
As far as the transition goes with these changes, not necessarily. It was more a lot of tweakings that we did on the verbiage, as I mentioned, but nothing major. I think that would have an impact, a significant impact on costs or whatnot. Definitely from a timing point of view, it would have been great to have this maybe dead of winter, in the middle of winter, so that it's a smoother transition. We do try to do that. But I'm just going to look to my team to see if you think there's anything that would be really noteworthy about costs that would impact costs. No?
I guess I'm thinking maybe someone submitting it for a tender might be saying, well, is it going to be that much more work to abide by this on their side? So
No, again, I think it was more a few changes on specific location or specific items such as active transportation roundabouts. And we don't see any major impacts. And if we do get challenge on this, and contractor did submit a bid on the previous version, and we can definitely kind of consider that as additional work or extra cost, but we think those would be minimal.
minimal.
Yeah.
Perfect. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Merci, conseiller Richard. Conseiller Bourgeois.
Thank you, Councillor Richard. Councillor Bourgeois, thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you, René, for your presentation and for guiding us through the process. I think it's a lot of details that you're going to be responsible for, but I do have several questions. Number one, does our regulation for the urban environment in Moncton, is there a conflict with the provincial regulations? I would say no, because it is meant to be a supplement. So we basically take the basic regulation at the provincial level and then we implement it at the municipal level. So without going into every single detail, I don't think there's any conflict or tension. It is really adapted to the goal is to adapt it to the urban environment with crossroads, with slower speed limits. Because I think the worst thing we could have would be to have a different municipal regulation from the provincial guidelines. But so it's perfect. I approve of that. Question number 2 for Nick. The recommendation says approved. We've had that discussion here and we had it several times. We saw other reports like the social inclusion plan, and one of the recommendations was kind of controversial, but maybe we could discuss it further a bit later. But there's things that are being planned and that we get informed of. And then we post them on the website. We let people believe that those plans have been passed by council, whereas it's not. And this causes a few issues down the road. So I would just like to have some clarification about that. Why does it say approved instead of received?
Right, either or.
Can you turn your mic back on for some reason? Just 1 second. There you go.
Thank you. This is essentially a policy level document that's approved by council because it's attached to the municipal specifications. So if there ever was an incident, if there was an accident and we had to rely on these, on having followed these standards, it's important that they're council approved standards that we can rely on. Correct.
Conseiller Bourgeois, peux-tu faire peux-tu,
Councillor Bourgeois, can you turn your mic on? There was an issue. All mics are off.
Ma dernière question.
Thank you. My last question is the following. René, I don't know why, but I forgot my iPad. And I'm going to go by memory, but there's a section at the 1/3 from the end of the document that talks about national standards. But there's still a few things about safety I'm trying to remember. But there's no provincial standards, but there's national standards. So why wouldn't we adopt the national level standards pending adoption of provincial standards? Thank you for your question, Councillor. I would have to go more into detail and I would have to consult with my team to be able to give you a fulsome answer and to see if we could align this urban supplement with federal standards. Well, I'm going to leave you with that and I will identify the specific paragraph that I was referring to when I have the document in front of me. But if there's no provincial standards yet, I think we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. But if there's national standards, I think it would go without saying that we should adopt the national standards and then we can amend them as needed. But I will leave you on that and I will let you take a look at that. Maybe Radia would like to add something. Good afternoon, Councillor Bourgeois.
The Transportation Association of Canada Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, because that was used as a reference for the signage, and that's used as a reference for all our signage throughout the city. So I think that's what that has a section on work area traffic control signage. So it would have referred to some of those as for the sign designs types.
That might be it. I just remember the sense of the paragraph that says basically, we would like to have something. There's nothing provincial, there's something national, but we're not gonna do anything about it. And I thought, well, that's sort of the easy way out. Why don't we have the national norms? So anyways, I'll leave it up to you. Merci, Madame la Maire.
Merci, Conseiller Bourgeois. So
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Bourgeois.
we'll go to an electronic vote. Am I
oh, we need a mover and a seconder for the motion.
correct? On avait-
Oh, we
on
did,
avait
sorry,
déjà
my
fait.
bad. Okay,
Donc,
electronic vote.
electronic vote. So
Both Councillor Kingston and Councillor Edgett are not in the room. We can close the vote. It's unanimous.
it's unanimous. Merci.
Thank you.
Madame la greffière.
We, the next,
Madam Clerk.
and Jacques is here to, oh, no, actually, it's Melanie that's going to be here to provide this.
Bonjour, Mélanie.
Bonjour.
Good afternoon, Melanie.
All right, I guess on an annual basis, our auditors come present the audit findings or audit report, as well as present the final financial statements for the year. And at the request of council last year, it was requested that a walkthrough is done prior to that meeting. So this would be the meeting. I believe the KPMG would be here May 8th, 4th, 8th, next public meeting, I believe, to present their audit findings. So in your package, we did provide a copy of the draft financial statements. At this point, we believe they're final. However, we have yet to receive any communication from our auditors as to the final report. These, I guess I just want to remind council that you would be normally used to looking at our financial statements in a local government setting. So looking at just the general fund, looking at capital budgets, utility budgets, all separate. Municipalities has to follow the public sector accounting standards, which is combining all of those funds into one, combining any controlled entity. So for us, it would be MID. We would have those in our financial statements, as well as the reserve statements. So if you look, I guess just to complete that, if you look across any jurisdiction, you would see the financial statements resemble ours, and they're all based on a set of standard reporting format. So as these are quite complicated and technical to review, if you go to your package, I guess I would like to start at the back of the document. I think this will be most familiar for council to see a good review. So if you go to page 26 of the financial statement document, the title is Schedule 1. It's called Consolidated Schedule of Revenues. Just wait till... I don't know what page it is in our... Shelley.
Members of council, just before we continue, well, just keep going to your page, but just as a reminder though, the reason that we're doing this is actually the first year that we are doing this. It is extremely technical. We're going through it. It was requested by council before the auditor come to present, so it's going to be extremely dry. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
So so on page 26, this highlights all the revenues and all the incoming funds we would receive in 2024. And a few categories to highlight is in the public sector accounting, we have to bring out any and highlight any government funds we would receive outside of the property tax. So in this area, we see I guess the first section, government transfers from operating. Those would be funds that, there are a few that we do budget on an annual basis, but those are funds that our operating departments would have maximized and optimized any programs that the government of different levels of governments has, and we would have been successful in receiving those funds. We would pull those out of their departmental expenses and report them separate as we have to. The next section, the next two sections, other revenue from own sources and water and wastewater revenue, those are your typical everyday general and utility fund revenues that you would be more used to seeing. Then we move to other contributions for capital and government transfers for capital, which pertains to the capital fund. So all the capital projects, all the money coming in to fund those capital projects that are not paid for through internal funds or through debenture. On the next page, on page 27 and 28, summarizes the expenses side of the statements, and they're divided into 6 major categories that are part of the provincial reporting standards. So we have the general government services, protective services, transportation services, environmental health and development. On page 28 summarizes the recreation, cultural services, and then you have the water and wastewater expenses. So at this point in time, I'm not sure if there's any questions, but if not, I'll just continue through the rest of the schedules. On page 29, this schedule here is it's just called a schedule of segment disclosure, and it just summarizes all of the expenses and revenues at a higher level. And you can see the annual surplus for the year is $68 million. On the next page, on Schedule 4, the Schedule of Statement of Reserves, this summarizes our reserve statements in the 5 major reserve areas that we have. On page 31, 32 summarizes all the resolutions through the reserves that were made and approved from council. On page 33 is Schedule 5 is just the operating budget summary of each fund. Page 34, the schedule of annual surplus. This is how we kind of convert our local government statements from a local government into a PSAB. So there's a bunch of adjusting entries and movements of funds. And again, those are all based on the reporting standards that we must follow. And the last schedule in the document is Schedule 7 on page 35, which is the schedule of government transfers. And this just highlights for each, the operating, the capital, all the funding sources that we receive from government sources. And then the last page of the document is just our consolidated, our MID area, and it just summarizes their financial statements that is included in ours. So all that being said, all those schedules are detailed, and I feel that council would be more familiar with some of the terms and the line items, and all of those are rolled up into the first 4 statements of the document. So I'm not sure if at this point if council has any questions. That's
Parfait, conseiller Léger. Allez-y.
Councillor Léger. There's a difference between the public sector accounting budget and the 2024 budget. And so it's because of some entries and so on. So with that, so just help me just at a high level, but if I look at page 34, I noticed the amortization expense. There's a $31 million amount that gets, I guess what's making the difference between the 56 and the 45? I'm just trying to sort of get an idea of, is this is scripted, things that, I'm just trying to get, what's real, I guess, and do we operate with a 2024 budget and we report it as the public sector for reporting purposes, or how does that
so
work?
we operate with our general and utility operating budgets that's approved by council.
Yeah.
On a public sector reporting standard, things such as amortization is a non-cash item. There's no money flowing. It's recognizing your assets over the term of their useful life.
Right.
For that particular line item, we use what's the actual amortization is as more or less the budget for the city. The reason we do that is it's such a large, it's a large item. We just want to match, we would normally match that to what our actual assets depreciation amount would be on an annual basis.
Okay. And then I guess I noticed, if I can ask one question, because it always, it bugs me, so just, I mean, I can't tell you how many times we come in the parking lot, we use our card, we leave the parking lot, and the gate opens automatically. And I noticed, I think it was on page 26, there's a substantial difference in what the budget was and what the actual is, and it's not in the positive direction, it's in the negative direction. So just, can I ask the question now? I'm just sort of wondering, is this something being addressed or?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, to the Conseiller Léger. So one of the things I can comment on, so we've been working closely with Jeff's team. It's something we're actually going to bring to council shortly.
Okay.
We've gone out to market for a new parking solution across our city, which would include on-street residential parking and also potentially parking lots. And what we've seen is very positive. So now we're just working out, we're going to build a project team or so on, because it is a big project to implement a new parking solution across the city. We have to discuss things such as timing of when we would do it, when we would replace, do we do it in a phased approach or so on. But just all that to say, we've gone out to market. We have a proponent that we are very satisfied with. Cost-wise, it comes in terms of where we were looking at, in terms of what we wanted, what we have budget availability. As for the parking gates in the parking lot, yes, it is something that we are aware of. It's something that I notify it as soon as we get it. We have a bi-weekly call with the individuals or so on. where we have been challenged just recently because in 2024, we created a small project team and it got fixed. Now, one thing that we have had issues with is when somebody goes through the gates, we had some supplies, we had some inventory on hand. Unfortunately, the last time we did not. Now, on Mondays, if you come in for a council meeting, I think the protocol is to let everyone out. So that's where you would see the gates go up. Otherwise, if you see it going up, that means there's an issue. But normally we're on it and we're working on a call to deliver it. So all that to say, yes, we have lost some revenues for parking. We're aware of it. It's something that we can actually make a lot of money on when things go well. So for us, every time we do our financial statements, if you ask Melanie or Greg or even Jeff, I send them emails, okay, like what's going on? Can it be resolved or so on? But we are looking at it and it should come in the next couple of months to council.
Okay, thank you. Is there any recovery from the contract that we have, or is it just going to be we move on?
Based on my opinion, it'll be very difficult to get a recovery. Sometimes it's a business you always have to be on. You know what I mean? As soon as it goes out, you need to make the call right away. So they're not really liable if we don't make the call right away. So I think we could share in the responsibilities. So.
Okay, all right. Thanks a lot. Appreciate your indulgence in answering that question, so thanks.
Merci, Conseiller Léger.
Thank you, Councillor Léger. Councillor Richard.
Hi, Melanie. Page 15. Notes to the consolidated financial statements. There are 4 new items there from 2023 to 2024. We come up in a positive at the end from the year before. But just wondering, and there's different ones that I would question, but I'm just wondering.
Thank you, Conseiller Richard. Are you on the note number 5, the receivable note?
Yes.
Okay, so all this receivable note details, we took customers who have a balance over 100,000 outside of the water and sewer, and we itemized those out as to complete a note as required. Some years there could be receivables in one year, not the other, so there wouldn't be any comparable to be shown. If you have particular questions on any of the items.
That kind of explains it. I mean, I was just wondering why there were some like new ones coming in and some in the past had higher numbers or so.
Sometimes it's just simply timing. Sometimes a lot of these customers listed have reoccurring billings. So sometimes it's just a timing. Maybe we receive their funds January 2nd instead of December 27th or vice versa. But we definitely just stuck with those that are over 100,000. And the rest are just lumped in the other category.
That's fair. Page 24 under contingencies. Rapid Housing Initiative Agreement. The agreement was for 5 million, and where there's a balance left. Just wondering, is that something that we lost or?
No, so that for that particular item, this just highlights that we do have an agreement in place with Rapid Housing. We hold their funds we're the holders of the funds and we distribute them as they meet the program requirements. And it's just indicating that we have $500,000 at December 31st left to be distributed in 2025. Okay. And I believe that's all that program's going to be completed this year. So.
Okay, so that would probably be the same thing with the letter D, number 18 on page 25 for
that's the half.
MHE.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, so that's the same thing. No, yep. Perfect. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Conseiller Richard. Conseiller Butler.
Thank you, Councillor Richard. Conseiller Butler.
Back on Council Legier's are about the parking. It always makes me think when I drive by Lute Street, we have a parking lot that we bought back. And do people pay to park there?
Yes, they would.
So
It's,
are they monthly passes?
they're mostly monthly passes, yes.
Okay, so, because there's no gate there, so,
That's right. So they're using actually the hotspot system rather than the gate system. So that's how they administer that
so if
parking
somebody
lot.
comes along and just parks there, so how do we deal with that?
So normally they would need to scan through their solution, through the hotspot, just like on street, they can go and scan. And when our bylaw officers would go around, if they see they haven't paid through the hotspot solution, they would be able to issue a fine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Merci, Conseiller Butler. There's no motion, so Madame la greffière.
The next item is financial statements, and I see Greg getting up. No. Melanie is staying. No. Then Jacques.
That's right.
Third time's the charm. Jacques is going to take this on.
All right, thank you, Your Worship. The first thing, I just looked at the agenda this morning, so I apologize. It seems that the item was scanned and it came out not portrait. It came out as landscape, so I apologize for that. But I'll walk you through it, and if not, we'll make sure that we send you a proper copy after. I really apologize for that. So this one is a little bit different than the statements that Melanie presented. These ones are easier to understand. It's mostly broken down into our general fund, which is supported by the tax rate, and our utility fund, which is supported by our user rate. The March 31st financial statements as well, just a little caution. For a city, we do encumbrance accounting. They are the biggest usefulness of presenting these statements at this time is depending on the snow years. This is where, especially when we have a bad snow year, it can really show, okay, what we've overspent in snow. This year wasn't necessarily the case, so it's still good to present these statements. Now, in the numbers, they could vary moving forward. There's a lot of timing issues that we have, or timing of when the actual expenses or revenues do not necessarily match the budget. So if we go on the overall statement, so if we look at on the general fund where we are today, we are in a positive position as of March 31st of $1,071,000. One positive from a revenue perspective, and that can almost explain the entire difference of our statements now, is we had a big building permit come in for the DFO science where we are better than budget on sustainable growth and development by over $1 million. So that in normal years, we do not get those major building permits in January in the first quarter. This year we have. Other items to note on the revenue side, we are doing good, again, if you look in community services, we are 257,000 better than budget. Although, again, as I was mentioning, there are timing things that do occur. Our education program at the Magnetic Hill Zoo, a lot of people have already registered, they're paying or so on, we're receiving that revenue. We only have that revenue budgeted for our summer months when we are offering that program. In terms of the expenses, things are going quite well. We are 107,000 better than budget. So for a corporation our size, that means we are basically on budget to say. There's not really any specific areas to note that are of cause of concerns from an expense perspective right now, but I'm just going to try to potentially answer a couple of the questions that councilors may have. So in operations, as you can see, we are 138,000 worse than budget, but snow is actually in a positive position. The one thing that's creating that overspend in operations is we have two big POs for our plants and for our operations of our pools that are open. And again, for those ones, our budget are later on because we're not necessarily planting plants or operating pools in the month of March. But they cut the PO early, so we are seeing that. In terms of the other thing, in terms of community services, venues is over budget by 298,000. That would include the Coliseum. the market operations or so on. But again, in March, because the trade shows, when we report the expenses, when we budget the expenses or so on, the trade show business is really busy from January, February, March, and April. I'm not too concerned. Normally, these things will even out. The crew at the Coliseum are very aware of their budgets, so it's probably just distribution and timing. So I'm not too concerned about that. And all of the other areas, we're seeing some salary savings. That would be due to, again, having vacancies in the organizations. So we do benefit from that. Although if you look into the finance services area, this is where we budget the salary slippage for the organization. We're seeing the minus 132,000 in there. That would come and offset all of the salary savings that we see in the different areas. The reason for that is when we budget our salary slippage year over year, we don't necessarily know which departments are going to have vacancies. So we put it in what we call other admin, and then to absorb the slippage of the entire organization. If we move on to the next page for our utility fund, we are currently $241,000 better than budget. Combination of revenues of $275,000 better than budget. It's almost an even split between residential and commercial. And then on our expense side, the only item so overall we're $35,000 worse than budget. One of the areas that I will just note is on the water fund, we are in a negative position. Not too concerning as of now, but this winter we did see more water breaks than we have in the past. That happens in winters where we have major freezes and then it thaws and then major freezes again. So not concerning. We will make up those expenses as we move forward. In addition to this, we've attached the purchase acquisition reports for the month of, I believe, September to March. Some councilors may ask the question, how come we're attaching September to March? So normally we would present a budget here. We normally present our budget. We would normally in October, for the October financial statements, which we would typically could present in early November or late November. This year, because of the province delaying us getting the property assessment numbers, we didn't present those financial statements, so that's why we are attaching them as of now. The audited financial statements, again, were supposed to be presented on May 4th by KPMG. They've requested a 2-week extension because they had more reviews to be done. So, and in those purchasing acquisition report, again, if council has any question on any items, I can try my best to answer it, and if not, I will certainly get the information for you. So that is all that I have for now, and I will open it up to questions. Thank you.
Merci, Jacques. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Conseiller
Are there any questions? Conseiller Richard, I can't see your light. Could you just raise it a little bit? I can't see if it's on. Thank you, Jacques. Thank you for the presentation.
Almost every time you're already nodding your head. So when you're coming up with when we see single source and sole source, single source for me looks new, but maybe it's been there before. At the bottom of the reports, it's mentioned what a single source is, what a sole source is. So out of these 7 months of reports that are here, there were 9 single source, 11 sole source out of 53 items. It's almost 38% of the items that were singled or sold. How does a vendor dispute this? Let's say another vendor comes out and says, I think I have something comparable to what you're looking for, and how would that vendor dispute this?
Thank you, Worship, to Conseiller Richard. So the vendor, if there was a vendor in these instances that it would occur, they would basically, they could write in a message to the city manager. It could be to myself, it could be to the procurement team if they have disputed it. That being said, the one thing I want to indicate to council is we do have a process for these single source, sole source, or so on. So the way it works is the departments, who are purchasing the equipment, they do make the requests. It has to be approved by their general managers when they make that request. After that, it comes to our department, so it goes to procurement, and procurement will go through it. And we've seen some instances where, for example, where like Tanya and her team would be like, no, unfortunately, this does not pass the tests. There are different types of vendors, or there's different other technologies in place, and we will send the departments out to market. In the instances that you will see here, for each and every one of them, Tanya has gone through that due diligence, has accepted that single source request. And let me tell you, she's quite tough on them. She does not like them because, again, for her, that's what they work on, is that public procurement. For each and every one of those, though, the departments have been able to justify the reason for that. It could be many different things. Sometimes it's the only product on the market. Other times is we've standardized to one type of technology. Other times it's a timing issue. There's nothing else available that can come to market this quickly. So if you have any questions on certain ones, we certainly would be able to help you out. The other thing as well, when you look at it from a 38%, it's not really 38% because there are items that come to council for approval. There are items that are under these thresholds as well that do not need to come to council. They can either be approved by the CAO, by the GM, by the directors. We have our P cards, our credit cards. So there's a lot of more purchases that happen. These are the ones that are from 75,000 to 500,000 for operating, and for the capital, 75,000 to 5 million. So
no, I'm not doubting that we're looking at everything to make sure that it's just having that many, right? Just lifts the question. So I'm not sure, and like I said, I do appreciate the definitions of both that are on the reports. But maybe, I don't know if it makes any sense to have some kind of explanations to go with those. Something that goes to tender or RFP, something that's black and white and that's in front of everything. I'm not saying that they're hidden. I'm just saying that it's just stuff that we're not aware.
Okay.
I guess.
I will certainly communicate that to our procurement team.
Thank you.
Merci, Conseiller Richard. Conseiller Léger.
Merci, Madame la Mairesse. Just a few questions, I guess, and thanks for the different purchasing summaries. Can I just ask quickly, the one in September talks about, I guess it must be promotional items to the tune of $200,000 for all departments, incredible novelties. So is this something we budget every year? $200,000 seems like an awfully big number when we're being asked different things. So I would like some clarification if I could.
Yeah, so last year what we did is typically departments would order promotional items from anyone, anywhere, anytime. And so last year we went through an RFP and selected 2 companies. Incredible Novelties is one, and the other one is the ST Group that were selected. So now we go through those 2 companies only and don't go to others. So I'm just.
Is it in line with?
No. And the other thing I would add to that, so Isabel has the explanation. The other thing as well, when we go out for RFP and you see the value of $200,000, so again, that's not a yearly amount. So this one, I do not necessarily have the details, but it's probably a 3-year or a 5-year contract with that novelty company. And the other thing as well is those budgets do exist within our user departments, because if not, again, it would not pass the test. We would need to bring it to council for approval.
I'm just wondering if, I guess, just for some clarity, there are some standards in terms of, you know, I don't know, corporation our size, a municipality our size, a percentage of like the best practices. That's all. I mean, you know, people question a lot of things and where we place money, right? And so, I don't know, it just, it's just glaring. I understand it though, in terms of pulling everything together, and maybe just for future, maybe some background, that's all. In October, the Economic Development National Public Relations, is this something that, is this a national, or it's a national one, but is this a 1 year, 3 year, what exactly is the basis of that? If I could, because I think it's worth over $500,000.
Shelley?
I'll take this one just where I was overseeing this RFP at the time. So the Economic Development Group has a standing order. So went out to public tender for an RFP, and originally the agreement was 3 years with an extension of 2 additional years. So for a 5-year agreement. October of 2024 was a renewal. So the RFP went out again, was awarded. So initially it would be established as a 3-year agreement starting in the fall of 2024.
Okay.
So essentially it gives the Economic Development Department a standing order so that as projects arise, they can work directly through this agency. The name of the company is called The National, but it's essentially a marketing agency that allows them to execute projects.
Okay,
Yep.
all right. And that's standard, we do that on a regular basis? I
That is
presume.
correct, yes. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I think in the December one, I'm just wondering, the sole source for Ashford.
Yeah, no, I'm good with this one. So this one, the sole source, the reason for it is that based on the rules, and I know this from like 2 or 3 years ago, we are allowed to do so because they are the ones who owned all the land of where this project is going. It's potentially a road would go there on their land or so on. So it's just logical that based on the criteria that we have to enter into an agreement with them, because if not, you wouldn't get a contractor to work on somebody else's land.
Okay, no, all right, thanks. And my last one is, it's probably the March one, I think. It was about a pilot project that Kodiak Transpo is doing for, with a taxi shuttle service. And just some context behind that, if I could get some?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So this one, so in the collective bargaining agreement for that union, we have to bring them to where at bus transfer. So if their shift is beginning, the bus is not necessarily always at Kodiak Transpo. So in last year's budget, we had approved funding for that. We're looking at different things. Should we buy vehicles and transport them ourselves? Or are we better off trying to use taxis to bring them from one location to another? So this would be that we are piloting to use taxis to bring them to their locations.
And so then at the end, you'll evaluate what that cost is compared to
Purchasing some vehicles and transporting them as we go
doing
with.
that analysis.
Yep.
Okay, great, thanks a lot. And normally, would we receive September all the way to March? Or can we get them
No.
maybe?
So normally the way it would happen is we normally present the statements in Q4,
Yeah.
which would knock off 3 or 4 of these reports as we go.
Good, thank you, merci.
Merci, conseiller Léger, conseiller Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Maire. Merci, Jacques et compagnie.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Jacques, and your team. I just want to make sure, because these are principles and the details are very important. We have two major responsibilities. One is to hire and to assess and to supervise the CAO, and the other one is the adoption and the monitoring of the budget. And there are reasons for this, because otherwise we're going to have phone calls. I mean, we get phone calls when things go well, but we get more when things happen. So it's each of the managers have a certain discretionary authority. Some of them is 100,000 or more. As long as it's an amount that's approved in the budget, and normally it comes to council, the tenders and the RFPs come to council, but some of them are under the threshold because we don't want to micromanage all of the city's purchasing either. So the first principle, as long as it's approved in the budget, even if it doesn't come to council, we should still be informed, right? We should be told, okay, staff purchased that vehicle. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, not for every 25 cents worth, but for these major purchases. Because if I get a call about it, I look stupid often enough without having to be it as a counselor as well. So, but when it's not approved as budget, and I don't remember the last time that somebody said somebody sent us an email to say, no, it wasn't approved in the budget, but we purchased something because it was an emergency, because I don't know. I mean, maybe it does happen. Just could you tell me if it does happen, but we've never had these emergency purchases without informing council? Well, last year, we reviewed the policy and we brought it back to council. So for all items, either are operational or capital, if they are over the $40,000 that is budgeted, or if it's an unbudgeted, the CAO has the authority to approve under 40,000, and everything else is presented to council. That's why you're going to see some tenders that are $1 million or 900,000, but we have to bring it to council because it's over the $40,000 that the authority of the CAO. Okay, so when it comes to council, I'm informed, but when it's below threshold, as long as it's budgeted, you have to inform us, even if it's just an email that says, okay, this is what we bought and this is what we purchased. We didn't come to council because all was already in the budget and the manager agreed, but you do inform us, right? Yes, exactly. That's exactly what this report is, the purchase acquisition report. It's all of the items that are above $75,000 for operational and capital. All of these expenditures that we bring to council, all transactions, whether they're with our credit cards or $5,000-6,000, we don't report those. We spend about, I don't know, $350 million per year, so there would be a lot to report on. But through our policy now, it's $75,000 and more that we report on. And of course, it's included on the purchase acquisition report, or we report to council. And you do that every 3 months? Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Bourgeois. There are no further questions. So, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Jacques. You're welcome.
The election of members of council remuneration and ward boundary bylaw, A202. Nick Robichaud is going to lead this. We have in the room myself, France Levesque-Ouellette, Paul Edgar, and Rachel Doucette for questions.
I'll just sit here if that's okay. Yes, so I'm not going to go through all of the CRF. I assume everybody's read the information, but there is a bit of background in the CRF about the history of ward boundary changes for the city. So the last major change to our ward boundaries occurred, I guess, in 2007, and then in 2019, the Enhancing Democracy Committee did do some work reviewing the ward boundaries. They had made recommendations for changes to the ward boundaries, but their recommendations were not accepted by council at that time. So we stayed with the same ward boundaries in 2019. And then in 2022, 2023, with the local governance reform and the newly structured local government communities. Moncton was affected by that. So at that time, the province essentially suggested ward boundary, I guess, extensions for us to include the new parts of the city that we had taken on. Council accepted those. And so that's where the ward boundaries sit today. We had the request from Councillor Bourgeois to have the ward boundaries reviewed again. So administration with the Enhanced Democracy Committee have been working on that process. And we've basically gathered some information here about population growth in the city. We have some information about how the federal boundary selection process is done, provincial process is done. But essentially, if you kind of look at the recommendation and a few of the paragraphs before that, administration's recommendation would be to not amend the ward boundaries at this time. For two main reasons. The first one being that we have currently just started the municipal plan review process. So that is a document that's going to direct how the city grows, going to set principles and policies. So we kind of want to see how that document plays out, which will be done in the next, say, 18 months or so. And the other concern is that we know the city has experienced a lot of population growth within the past few years, and that growth continues. It's not done yet, and we see there are major growth opportunities all across the city. So planning's perspective would be to kind of wait and see how some of that growth plays out over the next few years, and then we'll have a better sense of how the ward boundaries should be redistributed. If at all, if they should be. So administration's recommendation would be to have the review of ward boundaries done in time for the next municipal election, which would be 2030. And we do have as an alternative that we undertake the work now in time for the 2026 municipal election. But we did just receive word a couple of weeks ago from the province on what that process would look like, because we were one of these local governments that were affected by the restructuring. If we want to change our ward boundaries again within 4 years from that time, we require ministerial approval, which we knew. But the province did just provide us the process for how they want us to go about that, and it does involve a couple of checks with the province where we have to submit draft bylaws, draft ward boundary changes. So we would need to get that work underway immediately if we want to get that done in time for their October 31st deadline, just because we can do our work quickly, but we don't know how many municipalities are going to be submitting changes to DELG, and we don't know how long that process will take on their end. But as I said, that's an alternative. Administration's recommendation would be to wait until the next election cycle, just due to continued population growth and municipal plan review committee. We do have members of the team here who have worked on this project. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Merci, Nick. We do have a motion, so could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Donc, Conseiller Crossman, do you wish to move? And Conseiller Bourgeois, second? No? What is that? Conseiller Steves will second it.
Can we take down the vote, please?
Are we ready to go? No, we're not ready. No, c'est ça là, mais why do we have the? So, c'est beau.
Marcy, can we take down the vote, please?
Choix.
Vote for what?
On vote pas maintenant, c'est une erreur.
Okay. Je peux poser.
No, we're not voting on it right now. It's an error. Okay, so can I ask my question now? Okay, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Nick, and your team for having done all of the legwork on this. I have 2 comments and then a few questions. But in theory, I have no problem with waiting. But
To say how frustrating it is 2 years later, after the motion was voted on by council. But we're finally here, and oops, it's sort of too late because we waited too long. And it's not your fault, but we waited too long because the Enhancing Democracy Committee stopped meeting last January, I think, almost a year and a half ago. And too bad that Councillor Edgett wasn't here as the senior member of that committee, because I'd like to know why nobody told us that one of our committee, one of council's committees, stopped meeting, had a bunch of resignations, I'm told, and then everything sort of seemed to drop. Something is wrong with our governance model if we establish half a dozen committees, one of them basically stops meeting, and council is not informed of that and does not address that problem and does not try to either replace the committee, disband the committee, whatever it is the council wants to do with its governance model. This is a poor example of governance. So be nice to know why Councillor Edgett did not inform the rest of council that the committee on which she sits, and she's the senior member, just stopped working after a while, became completely dysfunctional. But that's for another day. The committee did do some of the work, and a year and a half ago, they presented their thoughts on the matter being referred to them. And then a year and a half later, almost, now we're finally tackling it. And it's a bit too late. I agree that we're probably going to run out of time even if we wanted to do it. Those are my two comments. Now, a bunch of questions. I'm okay, we'll debate this one. And I raised it, I'll come back to it when we get to the councillors' items, because that was one of my things. Where are we with the motion? There's 7 elements to the motion. This is one of them. And that's great. So we can tackle it now. My comment on this one, and I'll come back to the other ones later. My comment on this one is that even if we try for the 2030 elections, there's going to be a new census in 2031. So the data, I don't know how reliable, I guess that's my question. How reliable is the data that we would be using in 2029 at the most for the 2030 elections? Are they from Statistics Canada subdivisions? So they could be, we can figure out a plus or minus 10%, for instance?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, so they would be just as reliable as a census?
Right.
Okay, so we don't need to wait until 2031. I'd be all in favor of this. We do it in 2029, but let's not wait until 2029. You never know what's going to happen. So immediately after this election, the other point that I want to make is that I'll admit it to be, in a conflict of interest if I do run again. I'm not decided yet, but if I do run again, it's very difficult for me to make a decision on electoral boundaries that may help me, may hinder me. I'm in that kind of a general conflict of it. So everybody else as well who is intent on running. So that's why we had an Enhancing Democracy Committee. They'd be sort of like a neutral third party to do it. At the federal and provincial level, as you highlight, there's an independent commission. Eventually, council has to make a decision on it, but whatever makes sense. I think it would be better if we at least before the next election have this council make establish principles, maybe, but only to be applicable in 2030, such as what's the percentage? Is it 10%? Is it 5%? Is it 15%? That the wards should not be overly populated? And if it doesn't change, is it every 10 years that we should do it? If not, maybe every 20 years, because there's a lot of movement in population. There will always be significant increases or decreases. We can't just plan whenever there's been stagnation for 2 or 3 years. It's every 10 years, it's every 20 years, whatever. It's got to be automatic. So these are the kinds of principles that maybe this council should make decisions on for 2030. I promise you I will not run again in 2030, so I will not be in a conflict of interest, but at least we can make those decisions unless we appoint some sort of impartial commission to do it. So those are my 2 comments, but in principle, I have no problem, regrettably, to wait until 2030. Again, 2 years to wait for a decision on one of the 7 items. It's not, I say, it's not staff's fault. It's definitely the committee's fault. I don't know if the mayor was aware of it, and then therefore the mayor, or the former mayor, therefore she shares some of that responsibility, but I'll leave it at that. Merci, Madame la Maire.
Merci, conseiller Bourgeois. Conseiller Richard.
Merci encore.
Thank you, Councillor Bourgeois. Councillor Richard, thank you again. Est-ce que
Would it be wise to add money, make an amendment to add money to the budget for that year when it comes to talk about this again?
Doc, I mean, certainly there'll be resources involved in that process. I mean, I'm not sure whether or not we have any existing, I'll let Jacques answer.
I think when that time comes, we will certainly add money to it because it'll be a council priority. For us to add it now, I mean, it could be reversed next year or the year after when council decides to approve the different budgets. And it's always important to remember when we approve the operating budgets, it's only for that specific year. So even if a motion is made today, in 3, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, the council of that day will have the ultimate say on whether it's added. But administratively, though, when these things occur, they're not nice to haves, right? They're needed. We basically they through the rankings of level 2s and level 3s, they go right up to the list and they do get approved.
Okay, so and the reason I'm asking is that in the financial of the CRF, ward boundary review is currently not budgeted, but could be funded from the council contingency. So I guess I was just.
Yeah, so that comment was if council
Yep.
decided to go with an alternative and do it right now,
Perfect.
right? We would need to find the funding to be able to do it.
Yeah, merci.
Bienvenue.
Merci, conseiller Richard. I do have a question. Someone mentioned to me last evening that we have the highest amount of elected officials, more than Halifax in our region. So when you do the ward boundaries, is it possible to explore the 3 municipalities and how this works across Atlantic Canada or the province, and what's the best way most economical way to do this? Is this something that, I know it's a very touchy subject, but is this something that could be done just to explore this?
I mean, we can provide data on how many elected officials there are in a few comparable.
Yes,
comparable
that would be
municipalities
wonderful,
in our region for
actually.
council's interest, sure.
Okay, that's a good beginning. Merci. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We don't have, do we have a motion on this one? We do. Donc, electronic vote?
Yes.
On a combien?
Councillor Kingston, can you register your vote, please?
So it's unanimous. Comment ça?
Can you close the vote, please? There, it is 9 yes, unanimous.
C'est bon.
9 no.
Merci.
Councillor Edgett is not present.
Madame la greffière. Oui.
The next item is strategic plan update, and Nick Robichaud again is going to lead this with Claude Desbray.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this item, this is an update for council. We had promised to come back to council, I believe in the first quarter, just to provide an update on the strategic plan work. So here we are. As a reminder to council, at the end of last year, council approved the strategic plan's vision, mission, our core values, the pillars, the goals under those pillars, and then there were 2 or 3 strategic objectives or strategic initiatives under each of those goals. So that was the level that council approved with that, and that's the first attachment in your document, is just the pillars and those goals. Those goals for each item. So we had informed council at that time that the next step is essentially for administration to go back and do a little bit of further work to dig deeper into those goals and into those strategic objectives, and to really identify what are the outcomes that we're looking for each of those items. What are our key performance indicators going to be for each one, and what are the targets that we're going to be looking at for say a 3-year window. So that's the work that's been going on since the new year. Essentially, Claude's group, the Strategic Initiative Department, have been meeting with employees from various departments to work on those kind of outcomes and key performance indicators and targets. So they've been meeting in small groups to work on that. That was essentially completed by March 21st. And now we're in the process where the general managers are looking at the work that's been done for each of those and just kind of validating that work. And then we're going to be meeting as a leadership team to go over that whole package. We're doing that later in May, and then we're going to be having another working session with council where we're going to present this work to council, and we can have the opportunity to go through it together, see council's feedback on this, and then once we've had that session complete, then we can bring it forward for formal adoption by council. So this is basically a process where we're going to establish administration's work plan for these items. And what I have done here as a second attachment to this report form is just provided an example for council of what some of that work looks like. So this is a long kind of Excel looking table document, and the example that we've used here was under the environment pillar. And it was the strategic initiative of investing in active transportation strategies. So you can see the first column is whether or not there is budget approved for that item, yes or no. So in this case, there is. And then we've identified three outcomes that we'd like to kind of tackle under that initiative. So you can see the outcomes are listed there, and then we have the key performance indicators and the targets for 2025, 2026, and 2027. And then we've identified basically who are the responsible departments and who are the responsible individuals for making sure that we're meeting those targets. So that's the process, that's the work that we're doing right now for each of the initiatives that were identified in the council approved strategic plan. So like I said, this summer we're planning to have a working session with council to validate this work, seek council's feedback, and then we'll come back later in the summer, looking probably at August, to get that formally approved. So that's the update, basically.
Thank
Happy
you,
to take any
Nick.
questions.
Thank
And
you.
Claude's here also if you have any questions about the process.
Conseiller Butler, please.
Thank you.
Councillor Butler.
I'm just looking at this, and we go back to the environmental pillar, and it's 1.1.2. Environment says reduce net greenhouse gases emissions and other forms of air pollution. So I remember when this came forward, I spoke quite frequently about Transaqua, Rayan, and them up there polluting the air. And everybody said at that time agreed, this is where we should put that for the air pollution. So when I see that, and it says the objective says reduce the greenhouse gases emissions and other forms of air pollution. Next one, it says the strategy is to invest in active transportation. And it says public transit, growth, public transit growth strategy. Presented to council for consideration. Target will be determined by the growth strategy. There is not one thing in there, not one. It was like the budget, not one thing in the budget. Not one thing in here about the north end and the smell that continues. What pillar would I look under?
So can we pull up the first attachment onto the screen, and I can just show you where it is. It's on the it'd be on the second page of that first attachment, under environment, a green community.
Green community.
The other attachment?
Yeah, I see it right there. Yeah, it says, yeah. Yeah, it says to, with the forms of pollution, noise, odor, and dust.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at the second page.
Yeah.
Where it says what the strategy is, what the outcome is.
So
and
all
what the
we've
target is, and it's not even mentioned about air pollution.
Right, because all we've provided here is just one example. So we've just selected the example of invest in active transportation strategies.
We've been investing in active transportation since I got on council.
So I just wanted to show council what the process looks like. So we're going to do this exact same process for the fourth bullet under that item, which is mitigate other forms of pollution, example, noise, odor, dust.
Yeah.
We're doing the same process there. So that's where those items would be tackled, and we're going to be bringing that back to council. I just wanted to show an example of the work that's been done.
When would that be coming
that
back?
we're doing. So the general managers are just validating this work. I think it's got to be done by the end of this week or midweek, and then we're having our own leadership team working session on this at the end of May, and then we plan to have a working session with council in June, probably.
All right, thank you.
Merci, Conseiller Butler. Conseiller.
Thank you, Councillor Butler, Councillor Bourgeois. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Nick, for developing this. Okay, stepping back a bit.
May 2021. One of the first things I did was advise the mayor that the priority for me was public safety. That was by far the topic of conversation when I went door to door. Couldn't do a lot of door to door. We were in the middle of COVID, couldn't knock on doors and spread the contagion, but that was by far. So, okay, let's bring public safety. And the mayor told me at the time, in that discussion, I said, I can't wait to have a strategic planning session so that this new council, and there were 1, 2, 3, 4 of us that were, maybe even 5, Marty, 5 councilors out of 11 that were newbies. So we must have gone door to door or phone, email, whatever it is, contacted the citizens, and they gave us feedback. In our democratic system, that's it. That's the be all and end all, is the citizens who cannot meet here on a weekly basis to make decisions. They elect us 11 to do that. We come in, we have their concerns, we bring it to the table. Nope, no strategic planning. There's already plans galore. There's a strategic plan, there's 10, 12 other plans, sectorial plan, environmental plan, this plan, that plan, et cetera. That the only way that my citizens' concerns could be expressed is if I was able to slide an idea every once in a while. So one of the initiatives I did before the end of 2021 was rejected because it was not in the plan. So it's like a circular tautological argument. We can't redo the strategic plan, even if half of council is new, because there's already a plan, and then integrate your ideas into the plan whenever. I think it was about environment. I don't remember what the issue was, but it might have even been public safety that I tried to just, get it in. Nope. Sorry, it's not in the plan. So that doesn't make sense. I'm going to have 3 motions when I come in. I have I appreciate your report. This is not a comment on staff. It's a comment on council and our governance. In a year's time, there will be a new council. I hope to God, and I'll make a motion out of it. Sorry, shouldn't say hope to God, hope to democracy's sake, to our citizens' sake, that we allow, especially the newbies, there will be some newbies, the chance to bring to the table, and also the people who will be reelected, they will go to door, they will talk to citizens, they will come up with new ideas, new projects, new issues that we need to resolve. Give them the opportunity to put these ideas forward. Don't block them. It can't be just the mayor who makes that decision. It's got to be council. So I don't know how to make the motion. We'll deal, I guess we don't have a motion on this, right?
There is no motion.
Yeah, exactly. So I have three motions. I'll take them one at a time. The first motion is that there will be a formal process somewhere that within the first 3 months after the general elections, council will hold a strategic planning session to, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. I have no problems with the substance that's already in the plan. But I also remember, and this is my second comment, I'll come back to it, but there's got to be an opportunity for staff and council to go through what's being discussed by the citizens. And door to door during those 2 months of the year is the ideal time. I remember when I was first elected, after 2 years, I said, okay, I'll go again. I'll go door to door to talk to people. And, halfway through the mandate to see, they told me go home, because they didn't want to talk about elections and municipal stuff. Come back when the elections are back. Okay, so let's give the priority to the citizens and to their representatives. Every 4 years at least, have a strategic planning session, review the one that we're going to adopt probably before the end of this mandate to see if it still fits with the citizens and the future. So I'll go with motion to, it's, I guess, city manager or a directive if you don't want to go through a motion, but I'll make it formal, that we have a formal, at least 1 day strategic planning session of the newly elected council, whether they be newbies or older, renewed, re-elected people. Merci, Madame la Maire. I have other comments, but I'll take one.
Thank you, Your Worship.
May I ask a question? So, Conseiller Bourgeois,
Councillor Bourgeois.
the ward councillors when you do the strategic plan? So issues such as
All
the one
council.
in your ward, yes, but yes, that's what I mean. So every ward would be included in the strategic plan.
The strategic planning that we did last year and over the past year and a half, start off from the beginning. The first summer after the May elections, whether it's June, July, August, start there with there must be new ideas coming from our citizens, reactions to the ideas. Just give the new council a chance, because now we're 4 years into the mandate. And if it wasn't for the provincial government delaying the elections, we'd be adopting a strategic plan a month before we go into elections. It's kind of silly, in my opinion.
Monsieur CEO, Serge.
Merci, Madame la Maire Adjointe. So if I gather,
Thank you, Your Worship.
is that a formal process to update strategic plan be established for new in the mandate or shortly after the next council gets elected?
For all of council, not just
Yeah,
the new
no,
ones, but
council,
for all of council,
all of it.
within 3 months of the.
The council
general
will be a new council, right?
Yeah.
Regardless if you've got turnover, there will be a new council. So that's a secondary motion that, I guess, from a procedural perspective, how would you want to proceed there?
I mean, honestly, that was kind of the intent anyways. That's what we envisioned. So I
didn't know that.
I don't know if you feel like a formal motion is necessary or if we can just take that directive, because that's how I totally see that also. That's a great.
But then it's a directive, as long as council is okay with it. There's got to be some sort of commitment to do this. Otherwise, we rely, let's say hypothetically, that each and every one of us is not who runs is not reelected, it's completely new council. Who's going to remember that today this is supposed to be, it's formally, it's obligatory to do it? If it's a directive and you
So,
can
so
promise, that's
we've,
fine.
so we've marked it down as a directive, and what we'll do, we'll incorporate it into our next leadership team council session, where we'll review all aspects of the strategic plan, not just a small snippet that includes all those pillars and all the goals underneath them. And then we'll also talk about next steps and ongoing for the next council.
I withdraw my motion, and if council is okay with that as a directive, I'm fine.
Merci, Conseiller Bourgeois.
J'ai deux autres motions, mais je laisserai les autres s'ils ont d'autres commentaires.
Thank you, Councillor Bourgeois. I have two other motions, but I will let people ask questions if they have questions.
Years ago, when the city manager came before us and presented this, the update on the strategic plan. And I asked at that time, you know, he made a list of the 125 action items that were in various plans and integrated within the strategic plan. And I said, well, if it's really a strategic plan, what's the priority? And he couldn't answer. There was no answer because council had no priorities. We had 125 things to do. Staff had 125 things to do. Every single action item was equal. I don't agree with that. I went door to door. Public safety was not the thing that I campaigned on, but I had to change my campaign because that's what the citizens wanted to address. And when I came to council, I brought it forward. My second motion is therefore going to be as a directive to staff when you finish the strategic plan. I'll see what the rest of council says. The motion is to establish public safety as our #1 priority.
So is that a motion or a directive? And
Well,
I mean,
depending on how, I heard nothing from this presentation that says you were going to come back with priorities, and I've asked for priorities since day one. So unless staff is going to come up with a list of priorities, but even then, it's not for staff to determine the priorities. I think it's up to council to determine the priorities, and that's why I am making a motion that public safety be our #1. Doesn't mean the other ones aren't, you know, whatever number 2, 3, 4, 5 are, but that the #1 priority is public safety. If the rest of council don't agree with me, that's fine. We'll have a vote and we'll say something else will be a priority.
so do you want, Nick, would you go ahead?
I
Wish.
saw the CAO lights on, so I
Okay.
didn't want to give them a chance first.
Madame la Maire Adjointe. Part of our reflection is exactly how to engage with council on creating those priorities. So it's part of the plan as we move forward in that next exercise as to how to prioritize, if there is a priority, 1A, 1B, all those elements, and establish, and again, for council to be able to determine those priorities.
I've been here for 4 years. C'est pas votre faute. Moi, je manque de patience.
This is no fault of your own, but I'm starting to run out of patience.
Staff are coming up with a process. If council is not ready to say the public safety is our #1 priority right here, right now, then they'll vote against it and we'll let staff come up with a process to determine the other #1 priority. But I stick to my motion. I'd rather have it defeated if that's the case.
So we have a motion on the table seconded by Councillor Butler. Do we debate the motion? How do we proceed with this? Do we, any questions on this motion? Councillor Kingston.
Yeah, can you hear me all, folks?
Oui, on vous entend et on vous voit.
Yes, we can hear you and see you. Oh, you can see me?
Is that something that we would discuss prior to adopting that as a motion? A motion introducing that as a priority, well, it's a priority, hopefully. But I'm kind of missing the discussion on that rather than having council say yea or nay. which a nay vote would make us seem like to some that, hey, we don't support public safety as a top priority. I don't like the way it's being framed in a sense, but all apologies to my council colleagues, but I'd like a discussion first before adopting that. I don't know if that's where we're going with this right now, but it's kind of rushed in my view that we would adopt that as the top priority right now without any discussion among council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kingston. So what is the wish of, is Nick? Nick, do you wish to?
Oh, sorry, that's an old light, but I mean, I can make a comment. So Councilor Bourgeois, you've certainly raised this idea of prioritizing our priorities, I guess, before. There's never been a vote on it. I don't think it's ever been something that was debated by council. It was a comment that's been made several times, and like you said, it hasn't resulted in any kind of vote. So what we have now is we have a strategic plan that I would argue has priorities within it. There's probably about, I don't know, 12 or 15 priorities, right? It's those kind of goals that we have, and council has agreed on those. So I think, prioritizing those would be something that the council should discuss, and it would be council's decision whether or not they want to do that, or whether or not they want to decide today that public safety is number one, and then we decide the rest later. That's up to council's view. I'm not sure exactly what the impact of that is. If we say that public safety becomes our number one priority, what does that mean for the others in terms of budget and all that? I'm not sure, but that's all.
Merci, Nick. Councillor Bourgeois, would that include social issues with public safety? Or
Well, we know from the crime stats that social disturbance, this is sort of the umbrella that they put everything related to the homeless and stuff like that, is about, I think the RCMP said 25% of their cases. So if it's 25% of the RCMP cases, it's obviously something that's part of public safety.
I don't know what the wish of council is on this. I tend to agree with Councillor Kingston that we really need to debate this, and whether we do it through the strategic planning session, but it needs to be developed a bit more than just say this is a priority. Donc, Conseiller Steves.
Yeah, thank you so much, Deputy Mayor. Just a question for Councillor Bourgeois for clarity. I think you've been very clear that priorities is missing. I think that's being received and heard from everyone. Public safety, no doubt, should or is the number one priority in the blue box, if we're looking at colors here. I wonder if, as a compromise, you'd be open to having staff come back with the number one priority in each of the 5 boxes. I'm not comfortable saying the blue box is the number one priority over economy, the purple box. But if I take what you're saying, these boxes need to have a number one priority. I think that's what you're ultimately saying. And would that be more helpful for us to then further the conversation? We look at all 5 number one priorities, and then in our future conversation, maybe out of that comes public safety rises above as the most actionable, non-negotiable directive once we know what those 5 are. Is that close to what you might be saying, or a compromise to what you're saying?
Two things. You said 4 or 5 boxes, and Nick said 11 or 12 priorities. So then there's probably 125 still action items. But to me, in my opinion, public safety is number one. There's no discussion on number 2. But the rest of council might disagree and say, no, I'm sorry, public safety is not number 1. And as I said, there will be a number 2 and a number 3 and a number 4 priority. It's an indication from council to our citizens, but also to our staff. Where do we, it doesn't mean Eileen, it doesn't, continue her routine job. It's just, what does it mean, as Nick said? Well, there's probably a couple of things that it means, and it means especially for council, and this would be my third motion coming up, that we have to put our money where our mouth is, but maybe we already put our money where our mouth is, but our thinking, the only time we discuss public safety is when the RCMP superintendent comes up and gives us a report of what they've done over the past month or so, which is good, nice information. But we don't have a game plan. As a council, we don't have about all of these strategic plans. We have one in environment, one in economic development, downtown, blah, blah, blah. No plan on crime. To me, that doesn't make any sense. It is the number one issue, but we don't have a plan on it. We were sort of holding our breath that the Chamber of Commerce and the mayor, you remember that when we came in, they had this idea of having a plan. So they had a plan. About 90% of their recommendations was about homelessness and 10% about crime. And I'm not sure, we never followed up. We didn't take those 10% of the recommendations and say, all right, where are the measurables? What are the things we're going to do as a council to tackle crime? No game plan. So one of the things after we determine, hopefully, that public safety is number one, is to draw up some sort of plan moving forward the next 2, 3, 5 years, I don't know. How are we going to come from one of the worst cities in Canada in terms of the crime rate and the crime severity index? We weren't there before. 10 years ago, we weren't there before. And all of a sudden, we were number 3 and number 6, I think, on crime index and crime severity index. I want to go back to number 20. How do we get there? I don't know, but we need to think about it. We have to get our heads around it, and there's no plan. So we are missing the boat unless we determine that public safety is number one priority. Okay, let's verify if the financial resources are well invested. The RCMP are going to come to us in November, and they're going to say, we need 17 more officers. Why? What are you going to do with them? Do we have options? So I'll come back to my third motion. I'm not sure if it answers your question. I wouldn't mind, if you, with Councillor Kingston's hesitation, if we take a step back and come back with the process and everything else, if somebody can guarantee me that by mid-May, we've done it. I'm not going to wait another 4 or 5 months before we determine our priorities. So if I have no problem waiting for the next COW, whenever that is, and Nick will have the 11 or 12 strategic goals, and we can go by boxes, and we can have a really good discussion on this in order to determine what are the top 3 priorities. What's number 1, what's number 2, what's number 3? What does it mean, to come back to Nick's comments? I just explained it. We probably have to reestablish the committee that we had. It was never snuffed out. We just said about 6 months ago, we're going to stick with the RCMP. Well, our committee, Councillor Lejeune and Councillor Butler and I, we said, well, okay, there's no point in us to go. But as I keep thinking about it and I come back to public safety, I think we need to reestablish that committee to finish its job for 2 reasons. One, as I said, the RCMP will be coming for budget with 17 new officers, correct me if I'm wrong. So that's, at almost 200,000 a pop. That's, somebody do the math, Jacques. It's a big chunk of change. We know from our temporary work, Grand Prairie, Surrey, BC, Grand Prairie, Alberta, Surrey, BC, and now I understand Thompson, Manitoba, have a different model of public safety. They don't rely exclusively on the RCMP. They have RCMP, but they don't rely exclusively on the RCMP. They have peace officers, not community officers, peace officers with more powers. They have social workers attached to, because a lot of their social disturbances impact policing public safety. So they have a holistic approach to public safety. We don't. We don't even have a plan. We don't have a strategy. We don't have anybody that's sort of telling us how do we answer our citizens about what we're doing about tackling crime. I don't know what to tell them. I keep telling them, well, it's going to come. You see, once we have the strategic plan, you'll see public safety will be number one. And then council will have no other choice than to have a game plan and try to tackle it so we reduce our bad status on the crime rates to an acceptable level. I don't know what that is, to be determined. Does that answer your question? Sorry for rambling, but I thought I was pretty precise.
Yes, thank you. You very well may be right that it should be the number one priority. As you said earlier, I think we might be missing a step before you ask council to vote today on whether or not it's the number one priority. I would like to see, there's only 5 boxes for clarity. There's 5 colors. Sounds like there's a step that needs to happen with the general managers. Maybe we put a deadline on that, which isn't there yet. You're suggesting May. And we start to get priorities and have that conversation. I think that's what I've heard and what would be best, rather than jumping to a vote on what you suggested at the beginning.
If there's a commitment that within the next, before the, or during the next committee of the whole meeting, we determine the priorities, I'll withdraw the motion. If there is no commitment, the consensus of council, I'll stick to the motion and I'll go down in defeat before I back it off.
Well, let's ask about that then.
We'll let the other members,
So when is the other COW? What date is that on? You mentioned the next COW. When is that?
I don't know, usually once a month.
In a month?
That's just me.
So does that give you sufficient time? I'll say.
So it would not give us sufficient time to go through the entire exercise that we've had mapped out. However, we could then bring information on, as indicated by Councillor Steves, the 5, I guess, core objectives are environment, public safety, those ones, and engage in and allow, or not allow, sorry, I didn't mean that way, but provide the opportunity for council to engage in the debate to establish what those priorities are. And then we continue with our process again, having a better sense of exactly what the priorities, the ranked priorities of council are as we engage into more detailed conversation about, as Nick had indicated, the details on each one of the priorities beyond that.
Merci, Monsieur Serge. I do have a question for you, Conseiller Bourgeois. Do you believe that we could fit public safety in the other boxes? I mean, if you look at the economy, public safety has a big impact on that for our city. So, I mean, I think it deserves like Councillor Steves just mentioned, I think we really need to look at this un petit peu plus profondément. Donc,
yes. The problem is time is running out. The RCMP will be submitting their budget. And when? November they come to council? Doc, RCMP?
Thank you, Your Worship, to Conseiller Bourgeois. Yes, so the budget process is November. That being said, the request from the RCMP would be in the summer months, if not even further than that, because council passed a motion to request that we receive the information a lot sooner from the RCMP this year. So Chuck actually has, the CRPA and their team have created kind of the KPIs or so on in preparation for that discussion, which should be a lot earlier.
Yeah, they'll submit. But our discussion, when we get to approve the RCMP request, is November.
I would say it's before that, because the budgets are presented to the tri-communities before that. They are included, officially approved in November, but normally they would come here in September or so on to make that request.
Okay, even strengthens my argument. Voici le dilemme. When they come to us They came to us, we adopted the budget, not knowing what the KPIs were. Now we will have a good idea what they'll come again with 17, a request for 17. Somebody correct me, I think it's 17.
I can provide a clarification on that, though. So based on so last year, 17 officers were approved.
Okay.
Council passed a motion earlier this year indicating, the Tri-Communities passed a motion earlier in this year indicating that for future requests, for future major FTE requests, they would need to demonstrate through KPIs how public safety would be improved and how those resources would be used to improve. So I don't think the intention for this year is to an additional 17 officers. I think it's to assess how those 17 additional resources have improved public safety through those KPIs. Then after that, there may be a request based on growth of 1 or 2 or something of the sort, but nothing major for this year. Next year, though, there could be if the KPIs are showing that there is success or are showing that the resources are not doing what they're supposed to do.
Okay, that's not how I remember it. If somebody can correct me, fine. But we are not ready as a council to go ahead with whatever the RCMP are going to do, because the RCMP and the CRPA, policing, that's it, that's all. They do not have social workers like they have in Grand Prairie, Surrey, BC, Thompson, Manitoba. They do not have they have peace officers, we don't. So they have a different model using the RCMP, but they do not rely on the RCMP 100% to do their public safety, because that's ridiculous. The RCMP are not specialized in social disturbances and mental health issues and everything else. We need a broader perspective. That's my opinion. But I know that the priority has got to be public safety, and we got to figure it out, and ASAP. We cannot wait another 6 months by the time the budget is approved, because then a new council comes in. Like I said, if after 4 years, it's still not public safety, that's the #1 priority, that's fine. I'll adhere to the majority of council. But like I said, if you want to wait a month, get your heads around that, knowing that in the next committee of the whole, we will determine what the priorities are, and we'll have a process, a more rational, logical process than what the citizens have been telling us for 4 years. That's fine as well. I have no problem with it. But don't delay it by 3 or 4 months, please. Just 1 month should do. Merci.
Merci, Conseiller Bourgeois. And I think we all agree that this is an important issue, but it's one that needs to be taken in strides, and we can't it's not just about the RCMP. I think that we need to look at this in a holistic perspective, as you mentioned. So, and we shouldn't be rushing for September or November. We should be taking the necessary time to build the business plan to get this done. Donc, en tout cas, c'est juste mes commentaires. Conseiller Léger.
Merci, Madame la Ministre. Thanks. Well, certainly, I think there's always been urgency related to public safety. But I think, too, in hindsight, when we look at the amount of resources that we've put behind public safety in the last 4 years, 6 years, it has really increased. One could argue that, you know, we're not laser focused on one particular item, but we also have a broad category of services that are delivered within the municipality. But certainly, you know, investments have been made, and I wouldn't want to imagine what our streets would look like today without the community officers that we have, without the Enviro team that cleans up, all of those things. So I think that's saying that, you know, council has indirectly, you know, moved this forward in terms of things that we need. But I agree that we're faced with this dilemma that, okay, now we're hearing that our streets are some of the worst in Canada. And, you know, I've read the report. try to get my head around it. I think we need a better understanding. I mean, you know, I look at violent crime and I look at it being higher than Halifax. And yet every time you turn around, I don't know about you, but I mean, somebody gets stabbed in Halifax and I don't hear. So I guess we've got to, I want to put that in perspective because those things don't do our community any good. And I'd like to have because it only went to 2022. And our thefts were way up back in 19 and 20. We had a lot of break-in enters. We had a lot of, I mean, I know by the Ward 2 public sessions we had and how much stuff was being stolen and all that stuff. But I'd like to have a better understanding because it's alarming. But then with that has come the increase in mental health. So all of those issues, you know, turn into crimes like we saw in Vancouver. Unfortunately, it's likely mental health that created, you know, the person to kill 11 people yesterday with vehicle. There is an urgency, and I would agree. And I think, you know, we probably need to have the debate, but it's not a yes or no answer. And I think that's the thing we need to really think about. Okay, without having safe streets and not, and I think I'm willing to say, you know, let's come back in a month at the committee of the whole and let's talk about it. I think that we have many priorities, but I think an underlying theme for the health of all of our priorities is if we don't have a safe community, we can do all of the events we want, we can do all the rest of the stuff we want, and people aren't going to feel comfortable and they're not going to go out and we're not going to be successful. And it's going to eventually going to affect the things that drive our economy. And, you know, it's a serious conversation. I understand. I mean, heard it at the door as well. But I also know that we need to have a plan. And I'm fearful of what the RCMP are going to come and say, this is what we need and trust us on this. And we need better measurements. And we need to look at what other departments across Canada are doing. And I think that this is probably the opportunity. So you know, if Councillor Bourgeois wants to pause for a month and we come back and we have the discussion, I think it's important. Otherwise, if we don't have any priorities, or if we have no priorities, then there's no point in preparing these documents. And if we have so many priorities that we don't know which ones act on, then again, it defeats the purpose. So I believe that, you know, we're motivated, and I appreciated, you know, what Councillor Steeves had in terms of, you know, taking a look and putting a perspective. And I don't think it's a yes and no. I think it's a question of, okay, let's think about this. We're already doing a lot of this stuff, even though it hasn't been easy. So anyway, just my thoughts, and I think in a month would be.
Merci, Conseiller Léger. Conseiller Butler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My suggestion would be, and I would say, is that when Councillor Bourgeois and myself and Leger were on the committee before, we were kind of lasered in on just policing at the time, which was, should we look at this or should we look at that? But I think, you know, that committee should still be put back into place like ASAP.
Councillor Butler. So I'm just trying to understand where we're going with this. So do we agree, does council wish to discuss this at the next COW? Have and how would we do that? Is it just amongst ourselves or Monsieur Le Gérant?
So administration will prepare the background information and the information that would be required for council to be able to have that debate. Again, we would establish, again, a broad overview of the 4 pillars or 5 pillars that have been identified, and then and provide the opportunity for council to have that debate to discuss what those are and have some backgrounds on all those key elements within those pillars, I guess.
Merci. And we could also add the committee, the possible, if council decides to appoint a committee, that could be added to the COW as well.
We could definitely add an item on reestablishing that committee and with some of the comments that we've heard today, and not reestablish, but re-engage if you want to that committee, and then it would be up to council to debate and for decision.
C'est bon. And could we make sure that the committee includes the necessary, I mean, we had just council during the last, you mentioned some provincial,
Can I get that on? To ask the province and also maybe downtown Moncton or somebody like that that wants to be on with us.
that's a good idea. And at some point, we need to talk with the feds as well. So, no, c'est bon. So is that clear for everyone? So it's, oui, Conseiller Bourgeois.
I like Councillor Steve's idea, to sort of help staff. I don't know if you want to present all 11 or one out of boxes and, whatever, which way you think is best. There could be a potential that out of one box, there'd be 2 that are more important than one out of box red. But anyways, it's always a challenge to figure it out, but at least we could narrow the scope down. But I insist, if after 4 years, we still don't know what our priorities are, something's wrong. Something is badly wrong. So I know it's a short-term time frame, but we don't have much of a choice because we waited too long for this. Nobody's fault, but here we are. Merci.
Merci, Conseiller Bourgeois. So just again, to understand correctly, so this COW, it covered just that because this could take 3 or 4 hours at least. So it needs to, c'est bon, Nick.
I just want to clarify from your last comment. So I don't I don't envision administration doing any work to identify priorities. I think that's a council discussion. So really, what I would process how we do it. Okay, fine, but I think that we'll just kind of present the strategic plan document that council has already approved, and from that document, I think council needs to decide if there are certain priorities there that need to rise above others. And we figure out how we do that. And then that will dictate how the work below those levels, how administration does that work, if that makes sense.
Oui, Conseiller Bourgeois.
Merci, Madame la Maire. To me, I want to come out of that meeting knowing what's our number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That should be the goal of that meeting. We have the rest, we have the objectives and the pillars and everything else, but moving forward, what are our priorities? If we don't have priorities, we can't say it's a strategic plan. It's just a plan. It's a grocery list of things to do over the next few years, but we have no priorities. And I don't think that's the case. Maybe some councillors don't have priorities. I think the majority of councillors can determine what their top 3, top 4, top 5. I don't know how you come up with the process. Is it giving points? Is it giving little stars on billboards? It doesn't matter to me. But as long as the outcome of that meeting is we have a list of priorities, not 29, but you said 11, could be 1 out of each box. I don't really care about the process as long as the outcome, the result is, I don't know, a maximum of 6 priorities ranked in order. That's my wish, but it's up to council. Merci. Merci, Madame la Maire.
Merci, Conseiller Bourgeois. Is there someone who hasn't spoken or asked a question who would like to do so? If not, I'm going to go to Conseiller Steves.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Nick, just back to you. Is there an opportunity for staff, for the general managers to bring back a point-in-time update on these bullet points? You said you'll just kind of bring what we have back in a month's time. I think it would be helpful for us so that our debate, which is already being projected to be 4 hours, for you to set us up for success with a point-in-time update on these bullet points. Is that possible?
So in terms of the work that staff are doing on each of those.
Yeah, in the blue safety and security one, the first point there, review and adjust services to respond to community needs. Have we done that? What has been done in 2025? Foster collaborative partnerships to enhance community safety. That's marshmallow pie in the sky wording, which is probably our wording, which speaks to the point of Councillor Bourgeois. We got to have some meat on the bones, and I'm sure stuff has been done, and that's why I would be requesting a point-in-time update on these bullet points.
We can try our best. I mean, that's a lot of bullet points, and we'll have to have meetings with these staff on each of these items to figure out exactly what has been done on them. You know, I'm thinking. I mean, we've done that work with Claude's group, where we've set targets and outcomes for each of those. That list has not been completely validated yet by the general managers. I'd say it's draft right now, so I'm not sure that we're ready to bring that to council, but we'll have a discussion and we'll figure out what we can bring, but that would be a tight turnaround to bring that.
Thank you.
Oui, Jacques.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just to Conseiller Steves, one of the things that potentially, and I'm just throwing out there because the work has already been done. So currently we have 5 pillars. Those ones have been all agreed and voted on by council. Within those 5 pillars after that, there is, let's call it 3 objectives. I'm not sure what that terminology is. Underneath those objectives, there seems to be 3 or 4 initiatives. So I think one of the things from council, so if we leave it, for example, from pillar plus the objectives underneath, we're probably talking 15 items. Those could be brought back to council and could be ranked, right? That is one methodology that could be used. It's all prepared already. That it could be used that way. Another option could be to go a step further down. It would be to go at that, let's call it pillar, objectives, the goals, and then the specific initiatives could be there. That would be a little bit more cumbersome because then we're getting in almost, the 75 to 100 items range. But at a macro level, if we keep it to that kind of pillar / objectives and have 3 underneath, we're talking 15 items, it could be ranked. Because when we look at it, for example, and I think it's good for council to have this discussion in a wholesome manner, because, for example, I think everyone's in agreement, and if we look at the budgets that were passed by council the past 4 or 5 years, public safety has indeed got more resources than probably all of the other areas combined. But again, public safety, if it's number 1, has to be balanced with other things. For example, affordability, right? The affordability of the taxpayers, which is under the governance area. Again, public safety could be double year over year, but if it's not, where does that affordability fit in? So just for clarification, if we keep it at that 15, is that what council would kind of like to have ranked? And that ranking, again, will not necessarily be it's 1, do or die, and then you move on and the 15 is not a priority, but it has more weight? Or is that 2 at a macro level?
Thank you. Would it be helpful for an update, like, for example, the whole peace officer status? So last year in the budget, we approved the conversion of the COs to city employees. So we're in the process of working through with legal and the provincial government to try to push that through. So that's where we're at, the status of that item. So is that the type of thing at a higher level? So we don't get into all of 75 or 100, but the ones that we know are key pieces of what council wants to know about and provide that update point in time?
Sorry, Conseiller Steves, go ahead.
So I'll just be responding on my behalf. Yes, I think that would be helpful. We're a quarter of the year into, there should be some sort of report on this strategic plan. So for me, yes, that sounds good.
Any other questions? Any other suggestions? No, there's not. Donc c'est beau. Merci. So we are
Everything's good.
a few hours. Make sure we don't add anything else to the COW. C'est beau. Donc, merci à tous les collègues.
Thank you, colleagues.
Donc, on a terminé?
No, Conseiller Bourgeois has an item under councillor items. Conseiller Bourgeois? Oops.
Merci, j'en ai plusieurs, mais
Thank you. I have several items to discuss, but I don't have my iPad. I left it at home. So we'll start with number 1.
c'est beau, on a abordé
So the issue of electoral district limits, the issue has been discussed, but 2 years ago, we had adopted 6 other elements. A survey with citizens in 2023 to find out why they vote or why they don't vote. Another item was having a public meeting in each ward, having a citizens committee to encourage people to run as candidates for the municipal election. So is staff working on that, as was done for the electoral district limits, or what's happening? There's no democracy committee anymore to deal with those. So what is being done with them? Yeah, the clerk's office is currently working on those. We have a candidate guide. We have research being done on voter turnout. We are working with the city of Riverview to look into women in politics. We are working on a number of initiatives to encourage people to get more involved.
Pour venir au conseil en même temps.
But this needs to all be addressed at the same time before council. So all of your questions will be answered, but in time. We've even done some work with the province to see if training could be delivered province-wide.
On attend ELG, la réponse, mais
We are waiting for ELG's response.
it was taking so long to happen that we started doing it ourselves. So
OK. Donc, toutes les choses, par exemple, le sondage, ça et tout.
So everything in relation to the survey and all that is being done? Okay, no, I just wanted to have a little bit of an update for with a view to getting prepared for the next election campaign. Because people won't get to think seriously about it before Christmas, but I think it's important to get work on that. I'd like to remind you that for 6 elections in a row, we've had a voter turnout of 33%, and I find that it's shocking. But I would like to know why people are not showing up at the polling stations. I'd like to find out ways of encouraging people to go vote. Do you have any idea of when this is going to come back to us before the summer? Probably in June or July. We had a survey that was done with Harvard, like Loma. How's it called? The Harbor Research. They've done a poll across Canada to understand why prevents people from running as candidates, what prevents people from going to vote. Well, what's happening in Vancouver is of limited interest to me, but is there a sample from the Atlantic provinces? Yes, well, I'm looking forward to seeing the results of that. Item number 2. Strategic plan, okay, tech. Religious symbols. First question. A year and a half. We've adopted a resolution a year and a half ago to continue the status quo, but we're supposed to do a survey with religious groups to see if we should adopt a policy regarding religious symbols. Is it normal that it takes a year and a half for that kind of thing to move? Are we going to have to wait for another 6 months to get a policy? Could I have an update on that? Yeah, the municipal CEO will provide a response.
Absolutely. So I'll be more than happy to provide you an update. We have a draft policy in place that was presented to private council meeting on May 12th with no recommendation, just discussion and legal advice. It has been brought forward to the Social Inclusion Committee. The consultation with the religious groups has occurred over the last, I guess I would have started, I believe it was last October through November, December. And with the idea that the policy will be brought forward to council for discussion at the May 26 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Super. Merci. En passant, moi, je siège au comité sur l'inclusion sociale. Conseil Richard et tout, on n'a pas discuté.
I sit on the Social Inclusion Committee and we haven't discussed that yet. So, okay, it's coming up. What's the next item? Official bilingualism. In 2027, it will be the 25th anniversary of Moncton becoming the first officially bilingual municipality in Canada. It is still the only one in Canada. It is something that's quite unique and that needs to be celebrated. So I think it's something that needs to be highlighted, symbolically at least. Next item, review of procedural bylaw. Before 2016, Councillors Thériault, Crossman, we adopted a resolution towards promoting signage in both official languages. So there was no enforcement, but it was just a policy to encourage businesses, business owners, etc., to adhere to the policy. So it was supposed to be a pilot project for 5 years. And we intended to assess the pilot project 5 years after, which means that after 2018, the assessment process was supposed to take place. And I don't remember anything happening, so I would like maybe Councillors Crossman and my colleagues who've been on council for a while. Was there an assessment of the pilot project to determine if it was a successful project, if it wasn't, if we were able to attract some businesses, if businesses complied with the policy to reflect the bilingual status of our city? Were there any discussions from 2016 to 2021? Was there an assessment and council discussions about that? And if that's the case, I'd love to be informed of it. And if not, why has there been no assessment? I think Kevin will take this question. Thank you for your questions, Councillor. I will start with the policy that you referred to, the official languages policy for the City of Moncton. So we are in the process of reviewing the policy. We thought that it was important
Communication.
that the that the communications director contributes to the program. So we hired Judy. Now that she has been installed, she is conducting a review of the policy with the communications team.
Commencer un comité ad hoc ou
So there's ideas that are being floating around about the creation of an ad hoc committee to review the policy. So maybe we should establish a committee to review the policy in the fall of 2025.
policy that we want to review and have that committee in place by the fall. The other points in there I think that you had raised were the commercial bilingual signage and where we stand on that. That program has certainly been very active and being promoted in our community as a partnership between communications and economic development in recent years. We do have data and information available on that, a number of signs that have been installed, the applications that we have received, the funding that's been made available, so we can provide a fulsome report on that in detail. And am I missing another point that you had made?
Well,
or fifth,
maybe I'm wrong about the requirement for an evaluation after 5 years. And I'll withhold that until we have that. But I'm pretty sure, je vais demander à la greffière, donc.
I'd like to ask the clerk, could the clerk find the initial motion? I think it dates back from 2012 or 2013, and I think we were required at the time for the pilot project to be assessed. And I would love to have the results of said assessment, and if the assessment wasn't conducted, I'd like to know the reasons why. Yeah, there was also something about the anniversary of the bilingual status of the city of Moncton. And yes, in relation to the policy, and so yes, in 2027, we will celebrate the 25th anniversary. I think it was August the 4th that the policy was passed. I mean, I think it's something that's worth highlighting. Well, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to your presentation on that issue. Next item. I have a question for you, Councillor Bourgeois. Wait, was there an exchange of email last year when the previous mayor offered to review the procedural bylaws?
Procedural bylaw handcuffed us into a corner right from the beginning, and we made the exception, and I have to féliciter le conseiller Thériault pour nous permettre.
And I'd love to congratulate Councillor Thériault
a few months ago
for that.
had a really wholesome discussion, and before we went to a motion. So that I'm trying to remember what the topic was. But anyways, we sort of said, you know, can we pause the procedural bylaw and have a good discussion on something? And I think everybody on council enjoyed that opportunity. Not to have it on a regular basis, but whenever there's an important subject, that would be nice, that we don't seek first and foremost a motion, but we have a good exchange of opinions and questions and answers before, because it ties our hands once we make. So I think I agree that we need a review of the procedural bylaw. We were promised that we would. Is it coming, or do I have to insist that it comes sooner rather than later?
Nick?
Thank you, Worship. That is coming. We had planned to bring that to the May committee of the whole meeting. Just given the other discussion that we just had earlier, that may be moved to June. You know, there are certainly some minor amendments to that bylaw that administration wanted to bring forward, but I think that'll be an opportunity for all of council to discuss other items like that item that you're raising now. So, you know, that'll probably be something that'll happen over the course of a few meetings, really, to kind of get to where we want to be on that. But we do want to start that conversation May, if not May, because of the strat plan, June.
True. And if ever we do make changes, then it it's a bylaw, so it needs to go first reading, second reading. So there'll be ample meeting time, but I think it might be a good idea to just start with everybody reading the procedural bylaw, and if they have comments and suggestions to bring to the table, rather than simply reacting to your wisdom. I don't question it, but we need to figure this one out. Okay, perfect. May, so because May is dedicated to the Marshall, we might bump it to June. Okay, perfect. Merci. Did I have anything else? Nope.
The Acadian, actually, I forgot to add that to your list, the Prosper Acadien. You had asked for an update on Prosper.
On what?
Les Nations Prospères pour les.
Oh, yeah, the
les
patrimoine.
Acadians.
Yeah. I just want to, I don't want to discuss for an hour on it, but I just want council to have as a principle that it's not just an officially bilingual city, but we also have an obligation to the culture and heritage of the Francophone community, the Acadian community, just as we already do for the Anglophone community, the Loyalist community, whatever you want to call it. The city of Moncton as a corporation funds, and I completely agree with it, the two, Trites House and Williams House, we do not have any Acadian heritage site to support, but there is a possibility of resuscitating some of the buildings that were built before the deportation and were basically torn down, burnt to the ground. So I would hope that there is, at least in principle, I don't want to make a motion out of this, but that we, because we had a discussion, a presentation by Sophie Cormier about a month ago on it. And when I brought this up, it was sort of like, well, yeah, with the Trites House and the Williams House, that's one thing. But if ever we have anything patrimonial that is Acadian, we send it off to the University of Moncton. That's fine. These are objects, artifacts, and stuff like that. But when we talk about buildings, that doesn't apply anymore. That doesn't quite make sense anymore. So as long as we have in principle the recognition that there's two languages, but there's also two main cultures, there's also other cultures, especially with the immigration coming in. But if we can't sustain the heritage of the other official language community, as we do, and I'm not saying dollar for dollar, that doesn't make sense. Whatever the specific needs, eventually, if we can identify something, we have Nation Prospère Acadienne. We had also a gentleman, Monsieur Hébert, can't forget his first name. He came to council and he made the request that we do stuff. We have a plaque. So we're on the way, but in terms of buildings, we're too far behind. It just doesn't make sense. So if at least in principle, council would recognize the heritage and the culture of the other language, official language group, that would be very pleasant to me. I'm not going to make a motion. Just nodding heads would do. Merci, Madame la Maire.
Merci, Conseiller Bourgeois.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor.
On a terminé, donc conseiller.
That's all, folks. So, Councillor Richard, do you want to close the meeting? Thank you.
Merci. Ok, juste beaucoup de travail là, sur la place.
Oh oui.